In the late 17th century, the Caribbean city of Port Royal was a booming pirate utopia, earning a reputation across the globe as the Sodom of the West. This chart maps forced trade. British privateers captured manufactured goods from Spanish ships and sold them right back to Spanish colonists at a massive markup. This relentless cycle stockpiled immense stolen wealth. The running cash per person in Port Royal eventually eclipsed London. That density of wealth bought an incredible density of vice. The town supported one public drinking house for every 10 residents, a sprawling network of brothels, and a reputation for public drunkenness so pervasive that even the pirates' pet parrots were known to drink wine. Awash in cash and completely unrestrained, the local merchants and pirate captains grew deeply arrogant, desperate for new ways to expand their footprint and show off their fortunes. But the geography of Jamaica strictly limited that expansion. Port Royal sat stranded at the very edge of a thin sandbar, surrounded by water with no solid ground left to build on. This cross-section illustrates their solution. To create new building plots, developers gathered loose sand and dumped it directly into the water at the edge of the peninsula. Then they constructed heavy, dense stone mansions squarely on top of that uncompacted fill. The sheer scale of their economic success blinded them to the realities of physics. They built a towering, incredibly heavy society on a wet, unstable foundation. At exactly 11:43 a.m. on June 7, 1692, 3 massive earthquake shocks struck city of Port Royal. Seismologists estimate the largest shock hit a 7.5 on the Richter scale, triggering a deadly geological phenomenon known as liquefaction. The violent shaking of the earth forced pressurized groundwater upward into the artificial foundations. That rising pressure separated the loose sand grains, eliminating the friction between them, instantly turning solid ground into a wet, liquid soup. The liquefaction stripped the soil of its weight-bearing capacity. The massive stone mansions sank straight down into the earth, crushing the residents inside. The ensuing destruction was not random. It was the direct, mechanical consequence of placing heavy, ostentatious architecture on top of wet, artificially dumped sand. Great fissures tore open the ground, and the completely liquefied port city physically slid down into the dark ocean. A massive tsunami immediately followed the slide, swallowing 90. In less time than it took a sailor to drink a pint of ale, the wealthiest pirate haven in the world was completely erased from the map. Religious leaders of the era immediately pointed to the catastrophe as an act of undeniable divine retribution, a punishment for the city's famous debauchery. This sparked a powerful religious revival across Jamaica, decisively shifting the sympathies of the surviving colonists away from the pirates they had once protected. Simultaneously, the geopolitical landscape evolved. The growing slave and sugar trades overtook piracy as the main economic engine of the Caribbean, prompting the government to pass strict new anti-piracy laws to protect their commercial fleets. Ultimately, many buccaneers captured in the early 18th century met their end at Gallows Point, a British naval station built directly over the sunken ruins of their old utopia. The disaster provided the political and cultural momentum needed for Jamaica to shift its focus from hosting raiders to building a structured plantation economy. The destructive liquefaction process created a perfect oxygen-deprived seal of sand around the newly sunken 17th century wooden debris. Because of that protective layer, the structures didn't rot away. Port Royal essentially became the Pompeii of the Caribbean, providing modern archaeologists with a perfectly preserved, pristine record of 17th century life. Among those ruins, divers eventually recovered a brass pocket watch. Its hands were locked precisely at 11:43 a.m., serving as a frozen monument to the exact minute this specific pirate capital was lost to the tide.